Hi everyone, this is Andrew Prima, Ukrainian American, living and reporting from the capital of Ukraine, Kyiv. I'm a founder of Ukraine Business News, UBN.news, reporting from the front lines of the Ukrainian war with Russia. In today's podcast, fifth week of war in Ukraine, I would like to talk about few topics: Russian-Ukrainian meeting in Turkey, results and perspectives, how Russia left Chernobyl, Kiev region, but left thousands of dead people on the streets, and what is the next move for Russian aggressor. Jeremy Fleming, the head of British intelligence service, says Russia has greatly underestimated the situation in Ukraine. So according to him, Putin's advisors are not telling him the truth about the situation on the ground. Moreover, Putin's advisors are afraid to tell him the truth. Early this week, US and UK officials suggested that Putin had been misled about Russia's military and economic situation, and that relations between the Kremlin and the Russian Defense Ministry were strained. Despite the failure of Russian armed forces, Russia still keeps on threatening countries. Still threatening countries that have the same borders with Ukraine. The countries that supporting and helping the Ukrainian nation. Recently, Russian military jet with nuclear weapons violated Swedish airspace. Four Su-24 bombers, accompanied by two Su-27 fighters, took off from a Russian airbase in Kaliningrad. Two of the bombers were equipped with nuclear weapons. Due to the war in Ukraine, the Swedish Air Force has increased its readiness and noticed in advance that Russian pilots were heading to Gotland. The violation of Swedish airspace lasted about a minute or two. The country's Air Force lifted two Jas-39 Gripen fighters in response. Russia is threatening the consequences for Sweden as well as Finland in the event of the two countries joining NATO. Sometimes the actions by Russia reminds me about Joker. You remember this movie? From this movie, Batman, Putin is totally reckless. He has nothing to lose, cares about nobody and nothing. All he needs is to please his ego and achieve his insane goals. Ukraine and Russia have completed another round of peace talks in Istanbul. Before that, Ukrainian and Russian delegations met already four times and couldn't achieve anything. Russia kept on persisting Ukraine to give up, to surrender. So this meeting actually showed some progress. So far, this meeting between the two delegations has been most productive. At a minimum, Kiev has outlined possible parameters for future security agreement. So here's a few points that have been proposed to Russian side. First, the security guarantees for Ukraine that will be contained in the agreement must include an article similar to Article 5 of the NATO treaty. But the mechanism for activating it will be more challenging. It would require actually the guarantor countries must provide military assistance within 3 days. The second point, in the event of an attack on Ukraine, the guarantor countries will be obliged to send armed forces to Ukraine, provide weapons, and establish a no-fly zone. Another point, international security guarantees will not work in the temporarily occupied territories of the Donetsk and Luhansk regions and the Crimea Peninsula. As you know, these regions are occupied by a Russian aggressor. In a separate clause of the agreement, it is proposed to fix the Ukrainian and Russian positions and to hold bilateral talks regarding Crimea and Sevastopol for the period of 15 years. So, however, the Ukrainian side is working on that because Ukraine knows very well because for these 15 years, what might happen? For these 15 years, Russian Russian Federation will be using its propaganda and brainwashing people. And if we will try to decide the future of Crimea during those 15 years, we will lose it forever. You will never be able to get it back. Another point that was discussed among the guarantors of its security, Ukraine envisions the countries of the UN Security Council, in particular the United Kingdom, China, the United States, France, Turkey, Germany, Canada, Italy, Poland, and Israel. Ukraine might abandon the idea of becoming NATO. That was another point. However, it needs guarantees that it will become a European Union member. And the last point, Ukraine agreed to maintain its nuclear-free status, which I think is a big mistake. Because what we realized as of today, all these agreements and memorandums where Ukraine had signed before worth nothing. They're just piece of paper, empty piece of paper. As of today, we understand if the country has a nuclear weapon, it has some kind of guarantee, and the country aggressors like Russia will be kind of afraid to start another war. Russian-Ukrainian meeting also has some unannounced decisions or agreements that were made behind the closed doors. But however, nobody talks about those agreements, and we will see in the future what the agreements were made. However, after the meeting, the Ukrainian delegation suggests that the fate of the occupied territories in the east of Ukraine should be decided in direct talks between Ukrainian President Zelensky and Russian President Vladimir Putin. Turkish President has confirmed that he's ready to help to arrange this meeting in Turkey. Zelensky agreed to meet with Putin and he's ready to discuss these topics. However, he said that decision will be made by people of Ukraine. Zelensky plans to have a referendum in Ukraine where these decisions will be made with the vote of citizens of Ukraine. According to different analysis and predictions, the war will be brutal and long. It's not gonna end like this. Fighting in Kiev direction will continue, but the enemy was repulsed from the Zhytomyr highway, which means that the threat of the capital's containment was eliminated by the force of Ukrainian weapons. Judging by the blasting of bridges, the enemy is rolling north. This means that the troops of the Russian groups on the east of Kiev will also begin to flee. As you remember, this north front came from Belarusian territory, which made it almost possible for Russian army to take over Kiev. Besides the enormous pressure from Ukraine army, Russian troops, due to big losses, gradually started leaving central and north territories of Ukraine and moving all the forces back to Belarus. After they left, cities of Bucha, Irpin, Hostomel have been liberated. Journalists are finally able to see and record the horror of these towns and what has been left on the streets. As Russian army retreats, this is what remains: dead bodies of civilians with tied hands and footprints of tortures, destruction, and sorrow. Please note this. This wasn't done by Putin or his guardsmen. No, this is the grim work of ordinary Russian soldiers. According to one of our journalists who was on the field, 90% of the front doors of high-rising residential buildings are mined. Kids' playgrounds on the front of those buildings are mined as well. They might even dead bodies on the streets, and you see hundreds, even thousands of them. So all the all the people who are trying to collect those bodies are very careful, and special forces are examining all the bodies, all the streets, all the playgrounds, because Russian soldiers planted so many bombs all over those cities. So currently, the area is being cleaned up and inspected. Police and special forces and sappers are working days and nights. Our journalists spent a day inspecting, reporting from those towns, and after seeing those streets, they just said, "Poor people, we drove so many civilians dead on the roads, young, elderly people, and can be seen that these people rode bicycles, and after detonation happened, they remained on the streets of their hometown forever. We saw the bodies of young boys all over the place. They had their hands tied and shot in the head. All the male population in those towns was killed, and the range of these men were between 20 and 60. All young and healthy people were simply shot," our journalist Marina said. Then many women turned into the hospitals. They were raped for days in front of their children. Lots of women were found in their homes raped and then shot in the head. The people who collect the dead bodies of these houses are in shock, speechless, and in tears. The older woman survived this Russian occupation, as well as German occupation in 1941 and 1942, said, "Russians are much worse than fascists. Fascists just came and fought the war. They didn't kill children and women. They rarely touched civilians. Russian soldiers didn't care if you are a child, if you're a woman, or a man." When we drove to these towns, taking Zhytomyr Highway, it takes you exactly from Kiev to Hostomel, Bucha, Irpin, which are only approximately 25-30 kilometers from the capital. I would say 20 miles. You can see dozens of cars on the highway with civilians killed and burned inside. You can see dead bodies of women and children all over the road. It's simply madness. Personally, I've never seen anything like that. Even in the Hollywood horror movies, you would never see anything like that. In the meantime, the Russian survived troops moving back to Belarus. On the way, they keep robbing houses, taking any valuables they can possibly find. Actually, there have been a big number of videos online where people from Belarusian people, posted videos of street live markets with all the goods Russians brought from Ukraine. They sell it on the streets, taking jewelry to pawn shops or ship it back to their homes in Russia. I'd be just wondering how their women will be wearing those jewelries, knowing that they were taken from dead bodies of Ukrainian women. The second army in the world throws military equipment, weapons, and corpses of its comrades. The entry of the Russians on the Zhytomyr road was a serious threat to central Ukraine and bowed the main Ukrainian forces. But the enemy suffered heavy losses in 35 days from strikes on communications, from aimed artillery fire, from strikes by infantry and armored vehicles. Eliminating the threat of encirclement of the capital of Ukraine frees the hands of the Ukrainian command and allows to maneuver reserves in other operational areas. Now Kiev is threatened primarily by shelling from Belarusian side, by Russian artillery, and from Russian territory as well. And it's important that as in the last couple of days, NATO countries decided to supply Ukraine with heavy weapons, modern, high precision artillery, high defense systems, and anti ship missiles. As you know, the Navy ships are shelling the cities as well, cities like Odessa on the south part of Ukraine, and constantly shelling other cities like Mariupol, Mykolaiv, and this is just doesn't stop. And thanks to NATO allies, they keep on supplying us with weapons that allows to stop most of those missiles and rockets. In addition to all these, Great Britain also announced the supply deliveries of anti-craft and anti-ship defense systems and counter-battery fighting equipment. These weapons will allow Ukrainian army to gain qualitative technical advantage over the Russian army forces and will increase the losses of Russian aggressor by an order of magnitude. But but the general situation shows that Russia is preparing for a long war and is trying to capture the south of Ukraine, gain a foothold there, capture Mariupol and Donbas area. The war is dragging on and will be long. As you understand, so basically from the northern part of Ukraine, they withdraw the most of the troops and trying to move them to the south part. So they couldn't keep the fighting here. The Ukrainian forces pushed them back. However, they understood that the war around Kiev area was lost, and it's time to concentrate all the forces that are left in specific region, and this region is Donbas area. They want to reinforce the Donbas area and the south part of Ukraine, which is Odessa. In the last couple of days, Russia acknowledged that the continuation of the war needs additional forces and replenishment. Russian media have announced the recruitment of mercenaries with a salary of approximately 200,000 rubles, which is a little bit less than $2,000 a month, approximately $1,900, $1,800 a month. So, people who are ready to fight keep on joining the Russian army, the Russian Federation, and being sent to Donbas region. Putin is forced to look for ways to replenish manpower to continue active operations. This fact is also a recognition of the failure of the special operation, because at first Putin said that no additional mobilization would be needed. I will take Ukraine over 48-72 hours. However, as you know, it didn't happen. Russia's military tactics have changed. What to prepare for Ukraine is Donbass. Then in the Donbass region, the enemy retains a great technical advantage. It is necessary to realize this and continues to conduct heavy shelling of our positions with all kinds of weapons. Russia has a huge accumulated arsenal of equipment and ammunition, a large number of ballistic and cruise missiles. The comparison of Russian equipment to Ukrainian, accordingly to many analysis and military specialists, is approximately 1 to 8 or 1 to 10. Can you imagine? All these years, instead of taking care of the people, Russian Federation was just making weapons. They were spending billions and billions of dollars just for this war. The main difficulty for Ukraine is that the Western armaments that I have been promised need time to be delivered and deployed, and need a certain amount of time for their use to begin to affect the course of hostilities. So now we have to actively act on what we have in our hands and fight the enemy with what we have at the moment. Russia is trying hard to destroy the defenders of Mariupol, to declare at least some success. But the heroic defense of Mariupol is becoming a symbol of shameful failure for Russia. Mariupol and Donbass are becoming a new strategic goal of Ukraine. The defense of the city creates opportunities for a major counteroffensive. As of today, April 1st, Russian troops are fleeing Kiev, but the heaviest battles are fought for Donbass and Mariupol. Russian troops escaped from the northern regions of Ukraine. Today, the western and eastern bridgeheads around Kiev have been completely eliminated. The number of destroyed and captured equipment is simply impossible to count. We're talking about many hundreds. The threat of cordoning off Kiev has been eliminated, and judging by the speed of the Russian escape. However, Chernihiv will also soon be free. Luckily, Chernihiv will soon be freed from encirclement as well. All along the northern border up to Kharkiv, the enemy is rolling back to its border. Russia is overturning forces in Donbass, but Ukraine also continues to strengthen in all directions every day, with the number of volunteers still exceeding the strength of its military units. As of today, approximately 200,000 military men are fighting for Ukraine's freedom, and according to some sources, 300,000 civilians joined the Ukrainian army. So, as of today, Ukraine has about a half million fighters who would like to free this land from Russian aggressor. Unfortunately, there is a critical situation persisting in Mariupol. Mariupol has been blocked, and it's been a catastrophic condition. Obviously, Russia continues its offensive in Donbass, Kharkiv, and Mariupol, and is also building up defense in the occupied parts of Zaporizhia and Kherson regions. Russian troops are also holding positions near Kharkiv. However, the hardest and the toughest battle in Mariupol, it is completely blocked. They all survive people still hiding in the bomb shelters, and sometimes just in their apartments, and praying to God to survive. Ukraine's fate is now being decided on the battlefield. April will be a month of fierce battles in the southern and eastern regions. We must be realistic though. Despite the victories and the defeat of the Russians near Kiev, the Russian army remains a serious opponent and maintains a large advantage in equipment, ammunition, aviation, and missile forces. Putin hopes to compensate for the loss of his troops by recruiting contract servicemen. The fate of Ukraine, its statehood, its borders, the lives of millions of our citizens. All this is now being decided on the battlefield. Putin has already lost the war politically, informationally, and economically, and will do everything to achieve at least local military success and the maximum capture of Ukrainian land. As I told you many times, he will never stop. He will never admit his losses. He will never admit his wrongdoing. Glory to Ukraine. Glory to Ukrainian defenders for protecting our land. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed my podcast. Dear guys, UBN is a team of 12 people, 12 Ukrainians, who despite the Russian invasion are still in Ukraine and continue delivering the news to you. The UBN team would like kindly and humbly to ask you to donate to our operation in order to allow us to continue our existence and deliver the news. You can donate at our website. Go to Ukraine Business News, www.ukrainebusinessnews.com, ubn.news and click the banner to support UBN team. Thank you.